What happens when aggression meets discipline? A lesson these bikers won't forget. It was a breezy Saturday evening at a small park on the edge of Fairfield, Connecticut. Families gathered. Kids played soccer, and teens sat on benches with earbuds in, scrolling through their phones. 17-year-old Ryan was one of them, sitting by himself under a tall oak tree. His younger brother, Jake, was wrapping up soccer practice, and Ryan had promised their mom he'd wait to walk him home. Ryan, wearing a fitted black suit with a crisp white shirt and polished black shoes, kept to himself, casually flipping through a book he'd brought along. He didn't look up when the rumble of motorcycles broke through the air. It was the kind of sound that usually didn't mean much, just a group of bikers passing through, their engines louder than necessary for a quiet park. But tonight, something was different. The bikers didn't pass through. Instead, they rolled in, parking their bikes near the soccer field. 5 of them, dressed in leather jackets and dark jeans, stood out sharply against the park's calm atmosphere. They weren't laughing or chatting. Instead, they scanned the park, their eyes locking onto Ryan like he was a target. Ryan noticed them, too. He glanced up briefly, catching their stares. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but the way they looked at him made his stomach tighten slightly. He turned back to his book, forcing himself to stay calm. But calm doesn't last long when you're being watched. The bikers didn't stay by their bikes. One of them, a burly man with a shaved head, nudged his friend and started walking toward Ryan. That's when things began to shift. Ryan felt the man's heavy footsteps before he saw him clearly. He glanced up to find the burly biker flanked by 2 others, their expressions unreadable but intent. The group moved with purpose, their leather boots crunching against the gravel path as they closed the distance. Ryan's heart thudded in his chest, but his face remained calm. His mom's words echoed in his mind. Never let them see you sweat. He thought of her voice, steady and grounding, as he dog-eared the page in his book and set it aside. "What are you doing here, kid?" the burly man asked, his voice gruff and direct. Ryan hesitated, his eyebrows knitting slightly in confusion. "Waiting for my brother," he replied simply, his tone polite but firm. The man smirked, exchanging a glance with his friends. "This doesn't look like your kind of place," he said, his words pointed but vague. Ryan's jaw tightened, though he forced himself to remain composed. "It's a public park," he answered, meeting the man's gaze. The biker's smirk faded. "Got a smart mouth." "Huh," he said, stepping closer. The other 2 spread out slightly, creating a semicircle around Ryan. Parents and kids were still scattered around the park, but no one seemed to notice the tension building under the oak tree. Most eyes were on the soccer field, where Jake's game was ending. Ryan's mind raced. He wasn't scared, not yet, but the situation was escalating, and he could feel it. Years of karate training had taught him to observe, anticipate, and react. Fighting wasn't the first option. It was the last. "Look," Ryan said, keeping his tone measured. "I don't want any trouble. I'm just here for my brother." But the burly man didn't back off. Instead, he leaned down slightly, his face uncomfortably close. "Trouble? Who said anything about trouble?" he asked, his voice low and taunting. Ryan could feel their stares, the unspoken challenge in their posture. His hands rested loosely on his knees, but he was ready if it came to that. Still, he hoped it wouldn't. "Maybe you should show us what you've got," the biker sneered, his friends chuckling behind him. Ryan didn't move. He didn't flinch. His hands stayed where they were, but his eyes locked on the man in front of him. Years of practice had taught him how to read people, their posture, movements, even their breathing. These men weren't here to talk. The burly man, clearly expecting Ryan to fold under pressure, leaned closer, his shadow falling over him. "What's the matter, kid? You scared?" he taunted. Ryan exhaled slowly, not answering right away. Fear wasn't the issue here. Time was. How long until Jake's game ended? How long until someone noticed what was going on? "Leave him alone." The sudden voice broke through the tension. Ryan turned his head slightly to see a young boy no older than 11 standing a few yards away. Jake had wandered off the field, sweat glistening on his forehead from the game. "Jake, stay back," Ryan called, his voice firm. But the bikers turned toward the boy, grinning like predators spotting easier prey. "This your brother?" one of them asked, pointing a gloved finger at Jake. "Maybe we should teach you both a lesson." Ryan felt his pulse quicken, but not with fear, with resolve. He stood up slowly, his movements deliberate, his eyes never leaving the group. He shifted his weight slightly, planting his feet in the stance he'd practiced countless times in the dojo. "Don't touch him," Ryan said, his voice calm but edged with steel. The burly man laughed, shaking his head. "Look at this guy. Thinks he's tough." The others joined in, their laughter echoing across the park. But Ryan didn't waver. His expression didn't change, and his stance didn't shift. "You're not gonna do anything," one of the bikers said, stepping closer. And that's when Ryan finally spoke. His voice was low, deliberate. "You don't want to do this." The laughter stopped. The bikers glanced at each other, momentarily confused by the confidence in his tone. But the moment didn't last. The burly man lunged forward, aiming to shove Ryan's shoulder. What happened next was so fast, so unexpected, that even the bikers weren't ready for it. But Ryan was. The man's hand shot forward, but before it could connect, Ryan shifted to the side with practiced precision. In one fluid motion, he stepped forward, his open palm striking the man's wrist and twisting it away. The biker grunted in pain, stumbling back slightly, his tough exterior cracking. "I warned you," Ryan said, his voice calm but firm. The other two bikers rushed forward, clearly not taking the warning seriously. The first swung a wild punch, but Ryan ducked easily, his movements smooth and deliberate. He countered with a sharp kick to the man's knee, sending him crumpling to the ground with a cry of pain. The second hesitated for a split second, just long enough for Ryan to pivot and deliver a spinning kick to his ribs. The force knocked the wind out of him, and he staggered backward, clutching his side. By now, the burly leader had recovered, his face red with anger. He lunged at Ryan, swinging both fists like a brawler. But Ryan didn't meet brute force with brute force. He stayed light on his feet, dodging the punches with the kind of agility that came from years of training. A crowd began to gather at the edge of the park. Parents, kids, even soccer players stopped what they were doing to watch. Someone pulled out a phone, recording every second. The leader charged again, this time trying to grab Ryan by the lapel of his suit jacket. But Ryan was faster. He twisted out of the man's grip and delivered a precise strike to his solar plexus. The biker stumbled back, gasping for air, his tough demeanor crumbling. "Enough," Ryan said, his voice loud enough to carry across the park. His stance remained strong, but his expression showed no malice, only resolve. "I don't want to hurt you. Walk away." For a moment, it seemed like the bikers might listen. The leader wheezed, holding his chest as he glared at Ryan. The two others were still on the ground, groaning in pain. The tension in the air was thick. Finally, the leader growled, "Let's go." He waved at his friends, who limped back to their bikes, muttering curses under their breath. As they started their engines, the leader pointed a finger at Ryan. "This ain't over, kid." He spat before roaring off with his crew. Ryan stood still, his breathing steady as the sound of their engines faded. Around him, the crowd began to applaud, murmurs of admiration rippling through the group. Jake ran up to him, eyes wide with both fear and awe. "Ryan, are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. Ryan knelt down, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. "I'm fine," he said, offering a small smile. "Let's go home." As they walked away, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of the story. Not yet.